Before we begin today's conversation, we want to acknowledge that we'll be discussing topics related to sexual and reproductive health, mental well-being, and personal experiences that may be sensitive for some viewers. Our goal is to create a safe and open space for discussion, but we understand that these topics can be triggering or emotionally challenging. If you find any of our content distressing, we encourage you to seek support from a trusted friend, family member, or professional, or you can reach out to our Big Sis chatbot. Viewer discretion is advised. Up next on DiCHiPi UNFiLTERED.
Yay. I can't believe we went from a girl who had the guts to go and chase people on the streets on Instagram Live to now literally being a shell of yourself.
Yeah, but I mean, girls like us also need help because, I mean, if you're going to be dealing with so many battles, battle after battle, at some point you're going to break. No matter how strong ganjani, no matter how much you well put together, at some point you're going to break, you know. So I think that's the point for Mpume because she's always out there for people, you know.
I think it's important to also just say, when I say Mpume is not okay, I don't want anyone to think that I was listening and judging. That's not what I was doing. I wasn't listening and judging. I think for me, why I'm saying she's not okay is because you can kind of see all the different dynamics in her family.
Yeah, I think the idea of parents' expectations of a child will forever be there, and that's absolutely normal. But where it gets to be a problem, it is when parents want you to live your narrative of your life using their lenses. So parents typically raise children with the hope that with the lenses they've given them to see the world, that's how they will navigate the world and all of that.
DiCHiPi Salva. Welcome to another episode of DiCHiPi UNFiLTERED by JiK'iZiNTO. My name is Barbara, your fabulous host, but of course I work with my fabulous co-host, Miss Azande, who plays Mpume on the show, which, I mean, obviously, I don't need to introduce her. You already know that. Girl, hello.
Yeah, Sanbonani.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you, girl?
I'm good. I'm glad that you're here today because I really want us to dive into the real business here.
Yes.
Miss Business's business.
Yes.
Because Mpume's got attitude, she's got drive, ambition, all these different things, but lacks the ability to take care of her mind.
Yes.
And I'd love for us to just sit down and really bring an expert who will help us unpack that. But first, Nanwena,
we need to have a conversation. And you know what's sad is that no one ever gets to see that side of her because she always looks like so put together. You know, she's always rocking up for herself and her friends. You know, and in the midst of doing all of that, she neglects herself. You know, hence why we see her like really breaking down. And it's like,
but some people don't know that she cried.
Yes.
So let's cue the clip.
How dare you? Just because my girl's out there getting laid doesn't mean that she's easy.
Maybe I can like Mara, why matla? Text, asking for advice every 2 seconds, okay? In fact, from now on, you are alone.
Nompumelelo, I'm so proud of you. I'm sorry for making things hard for you with Lama Finals. I know what they mean to you. Whatever you decide, I'll still love you, princess. Ngabuyele kamereng lakho manje.
Yeah, like we need to open up the industry and give more opportunities to young women. It's very important. Oh, we have Mpumi who wants to ask a question. Go ahead, girl.
Hi, DJ Kemet. I hope you're good. I get the Huruwang Hupulana, but we've met before and I admire you so much. I was just wondering if are you open to being my mentor?
Atungwena, of course. I mean, mentoring, I think I like that. I mean, I should put that forward. Mara, like, Mponza, like, show me what you got. Like, dala something, Mo. Show me what you got.
I don't have my vinyls right now. I wasn't prepared to play, but I just thought I could listen in.
I really need serious people. People are actually passionate about music, not chances. Like, you always have to stay ready. Let's move on to the next question.
breathing techniques come in so clutch. Otherwise, umgo would have me dizzy. Okay, let's do that.
Yay.
I can't believe we went from a girl who had the guts to go and chase people on the streets on Instagram Live to now literally being a shell of yourself.
Yeah, but I mean, girls like us also need help because I mean, if you're gonna be dealing with so many battles, battle after battle, at some point you're gonna break. No matter strong ganjani, no matter how much you well put together, at some point you're gonna break. You know, so I think that's the point for Umpume because she's always out there for people. You know, and we mustn't forget the fact that she doesn't really have anyone. You know, because her mom doesn't believe in her. Her dad non-existent. You know, so
I like how you said a human being who we watched his whole story and character unfold just doesn't exist.
You know,
if that man was in the room today, would you say the same thing?
Non-existent, please. You know, also her friends depend on Umpume as well. Like Kuntabi saying, you know, for like with her relationship and her sexual health journey. So that's a lot. That's a lot of pressure. So like, and before anything, she's a human being, so she's bound to break. And I think it's okay also to break as if you're a strong girl or, you know.
And it's easy for you to say, it's okay to break. Because you're on a podcast now. But the reality of Mpume's situation is that maybe she doesn't feel safe enough to break because for her, if she breaks, who's going to put food in the house?
Yes.
Who's going to get the work done?
That's why she's hiding, because no one can see that. No one can see that. And that's not okay. That's really not okay. So, like, you need to have people in your life where, you know, even in moments where you're down, you can just depend on, you can have conversations with them.
People who won't judge you.
True. Because there's also that, you know, when you become vulnerable with people, there's that double-edged sword that if you become vulnerable with people, they can either use that against you, you know, or they can use that to sort of like help you or whatnot. So, and often...
This conversation, because you are just going so fast. Slow down, my sister. It's a safe space. Okay, breathe,
and it is.
talk to me.
You know, so yeah, it's a double-edged sword. So you never know what you're really getting yourself out there, what you're really getting yourself into, you know, because you don't want to be using that vulnerability to be used against you. So it's not easy to be open up about such things. So yeah.
And Mpume's mom's definitely the type to use it against you.
If I get that from my own mother, the one who birthed me, then what are other people going to do for me? What are other people going to be like? You know?
Sorry to all the mamas out there.
You know, so there's that also. Like, if I don't get that at home, where
are you going to get it?
You know?
Yeah. So this thing, Mpumi, is very complex because now it sounds like more than herself, there's also a mother to deal with.
Yeah.
There are friends to deal with. And I almost feel like even with their father who doesn't exist. He's got problems. Like you can see Rumara, this man, and like he's not okay. So I think for me, watching that episode was very, I don't want to say itchy, but like it was itchy because you can see everyone's demons and everyone's problems. But there's so much shame in it that no one really has the self-awareness to say, hey, maybe I'm not okay.
Yeah.
Maybe I need someone to come and help me. I think it's important to also just say, when I say Mpumi is not okay, I don't want anyone to think that I was listening and judging. That's not what I was doing. I wasn't listening and judging. I think for me, why I'm saying she's not okay is because you can kind of see all the different dynamics in her family that are playing out. And just to prove that I'm not a hater, I want us to look at some clips of Mpumi, her mother, father, whatever. Just proof that this girl, this is why she needs a professional.
Okay.
Baba. Singalazi uqiniso. Sengiyazi ukuthi le company le olokulisuka kade yavalwa. Angazi mhlawumbe uyongitshela ngelinye ilanga ukuthi indaba wenze zonke lezi zinto zenza kumina. Ungithathela ama record. Kodwa futhi lokho sekukwena. Mina ngisaphinde ngikuhluphe, ngisaphinde ngikufonele. Sole kahle.
Okay, sharp hey. Ke overreactile, ke boletse dilo tse wrong, mara lo no sense. Mas not like ne ke kwatile, ke le jealous, mara like ha nyane fela. Wa bo? No one ignore on signeta, even though that is funny because Enge bo sa nthuse nke be ke lo re le date.
Mama Mpume wena. Why unkhata off? Why?
Mpume. Oh, maybe what's it in Sagna? Herika work on communication na rona bo. Robasha.
Mpume, ko bompulela. Mpume sorry hleng. Mpume. Okay, sharp. It's fine, it's fine. Mpume. Happen awe mela ke nna ke le one. We metsile ke chicken ko freezing. O bona special.
Okay, so I'm really keen to get into conversation with our next guest because our next guest is a clinical psychologist, but not any clinical psychologist, an award-winning clinical psychologist, a trained EAP, as well as a spiritual healer. DiCHiPi UNFiLTERED, help me welcome Anela Siswana!
I love the intro.
Yeah, you know, Anne, when I saw your profile and I was going through like
Right.
everything that you've done, for me, the immediate thing, and I know you probably get this a lot, is that you really are in the business of healing. Because I think you take it beyond a mental headspace. You go deep into the root of what's actually going on in a person's soul and how do the two connect so you can holistically be a solid
You got
human
that
being.
right.
Yes, I got that right. So can I also get an honorary doctorate or something? Yeah, just to show that.
Honorary.
Yeah, just to show that I got it right. But my first question for you is, how do the two play together, being a clinical psychologist and a spiritual healer?
Yeah, I like the word spiritual healer because, I mean, there's a whole movement around how the concept of traditional healing came about to be. And with that history, it's not a nice history. I mean, traditional healers in the past, in the apartheid time, it was deemed as witchcraft. And post-apartheid, there's been a movement of kind of moving with the time. And obviously now, the current discourse has to do with the legislation of traditional healers and all of that. So the word spiritual healer, it accommodates for universality of understanding spirituality as a universal human experience rather than it being located in one view or one kind of belief or religious background. But my real definition for what I am and who am I as a healer, in WaXhosa we have amagqirha. So I call myself igqirha. That is a Xhosa divine healer. Very different from a typical Sangoma. So that's where the difference is. And to your point, how these worlds meet and how these worlds are deemed as contradictory and how I find a space to bring them together is in every space that I find myself in, I'm human. It then becomes a thing where if I'm in a spiritual space, obviously my identity there would demand that I am a healer, I present myself in that particular way. In a clinical space where I'm amongst medical practitioners, psychologists, obviously the language then changes. So I respect space for what it demands of me and I do that. But overall, I do not allow myself to be consumed by what these spaces demand. Like how I'm typically dressed, how many psychologists dress like this. So I would typically dress like this even when I go for therapy. And people are like, oh, okay, this is very interesting. And also, I can come into Ndumbeni in a particular way that may be different from how a person expects you to do. Like, for instance, I don't use bones to divine. I use spirit in what I'm being told. So obviously, because people thrive in normatives and normal things that are there,
100%.
I often bring some of these quite challenging and problematic ways in which people are not. I like to stretch people, right? And so overall, for me, the intersection allows for more conversation than looking at from different perspectives. So I always see things moving towards a direction that can bring harmony. And I consider my otherness. I mean, I'm queer, a black gay man, I'm a traditional healer, I'm a psychologist, I'm this, I'm that. And obviously, it's all the othered concepts in society, but I see that as a gift to humanity.
And it's so wild that you're able to take all those othernesses
Yeah.
and make them
Yes.
one blend that is, like you're saying, harmonious. Like,
Yeah.
even when you talk, like, I can tell you're a very balanced individual.
Yes,
Emotional
yes.
EQ on 1000%. Like, oh, balanced man.
Give credit to a lot of therapy. I am seeing my therapist.
Look
every
like it.
week.
You also
Therapy.
have a therapist.
Yes, I have a
Even the
therapist.
therapist has a
Yes.
therapist.
I'm human.
That's so
Right?
good.
Yeah.
What I do is therapy work, but it still doesn't take away the fact that I'm human.
Yeah.
So I go for therapy not to talk about my patients or my clients. I've got peer supervision for that.
Yes.
But I am impacted by everyday life experience. I've got my traumas as well. The fact that I went to training or train as a psychologist doesn't mean that I'm immune to that.
Yeah.
So I give credit to my high EQ, to my therapy, and also I've got a spiritual coach. I've got a lot of people that help me to get to a
Mentors.
point
Yeah.
of balance, because I also understand the demands of having amadlozi ngapha. They demand you to live this
Yeah.
life. You are young, you want to be wild and free.
Young, wild, and
Uh,
free.
I can be young, free, but not
Not
wild.
wild. That's good. We need to rein it in some way. And I
And
think
then the wildness comes with a lot of implications.
no, it does.
Yeah.
Consequence.
As a psychologist,
Yes.
I mean, I can't
Oh
be
yes,
seen-
because you can't be wild and then think that
the
there's gonna be.
groove.
And I think that's probably one thing that our generation kind of doesn't understand the weight of. Like, yes, we all want to be free and live in our truth, but
Yeah.
being free and living in your truth, and like you're saying, going against the grain of what is normal, often comes within.
I only say it comes with psychological consequences.
Yes, it
You need to be very strong to be in spaces where the norm thrives. And I didn't tell you.
Tell us.
Tell us, please.
In my other world, I studied theology.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm a preacher. So
And there's a lot of conversation just in that as well.
for the longest of time, I preached Christian doctrine and scripture, you name it. Then the ancestors, they're like, hey, dude, Tina,
Need you.
And this Bible of yours, we need to find a balance. Then I had to go and twasa. Obviously, it's a different theology, a different way of thinking. There, it's only God, ancestors, and nature. In the other world, yay, in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, la maspatla ay. We don't need that. So you can imagine the kind of conflicts I've had to
Yes.
sit with. And I think a number of young people are now woke and asking very difficult questions, like where do we come from, Itagazelo, our clan names, and all of that, because there's a movement that makes these young people want to go deeper into, actually, yeah, we get it.
Yeah.
We were raised this way, but how is my grandmother and my grandfather deemed demonic when they have lived before and they are people that I believe they walk with me? So I suppose I sit within the nexus of woke people, educated I appeal to those.
Yes.
I mean, if I was wearing all the snakes and all of that, I mean, I would not be that appealing. But I suppose things that make my work more appealing, I've got the language that is appropriate for our current context. You can place me in the north as a psychologist, I will thrive. In the south, I will thrive. In Makaya, I will thrive, because that's how fluid am I as a person to understand context. And if I was invited in corporate and to talk about this kind of topic, obviously I would have to tread carefully,
Yes.
because that space demands suits, look good, post English, It's not as unfiltered as this.
But I think that's just a testimony to the work that you've done on yourself and figuring out your thoughts and everything going on inside of you and being at peace with that so that you can operate as fully as you do in the spaces that you're in. Yeah. But obviously this podcast is based on a show, a series, and she plays a character on the show. Her name is Mpume, who my wet. Oh, Nkosi.
Who goes through
Yummy.
a
She goes through a journey. And when you spoke
You
about...
don't look like you're Mgo, by the way.
I don't Mgo.
Because you can't. You can't look like your problems.
But when you spoke about going against the grain of what's normal, I think her character is someone who does that a lot. Yeah. So her mother wants her to get a good conventional job, but she keeps going into DJing. Tomorrow she's selling weaves, the next day getting makeup. And there's a whole lot that she goes through in trying to accomplish her dreams and chase after her dreams. We've also got another character, Grace, who is set to be this engineer because that's her father's desire. But her desires are completely different. And you almost see them all go through this internal battle of just disaster and unpeace and unbalance inside because of what's expected outside versus the purpose and the truth that they know they're supposed to be living on the inside. So I want us to look at a couple of clips, and then from there we'll unpack exactly how we can fix their brains, because it's a mess up there.
Grace,
I understand that you're never going to trust me again, and I just didn't realize that it would take one mistake to completely lose your trust.
okay. So tell me, what do you want me to do? Do you want me just to say that everything is okay?
No, I want us to talk. I just can't handle the silent treatment anymore.
Did you want to apply for the fellowship in the first place?
I did. Or I thought I did. I worked really hard on that fellowship, and things went wrong, and it was out of my control.
Did you only apply because I suggested it? I want you to tell me the truth, Grace.
I honestly don't know. And I'm always trying to do the right thing, and I'm nervous and scared all the time. I'm sorry, Diddy, you asked me to tell you the truth.
Don't ever apologize for telling the truth, okay?
I think there's something to unpack there with Mpume crying and being disappointed. Because what I get from that is that she was looking for validation. She's looking for someone to support her, to say, I see you, your dreams are valid, and let me support you on your journey to those dreams. As a clinical psychologist, what have you seen to be the balance between needing validation from your parents versus parents imposing themselves on their children? And as children, how do we deal with that mentally?
Yeah, I think the idea of parents' expectations of a child would forever be there, and that's absolutely normal. But where it gets to be a problem, it is when parents want you to live your narrative of your life using their lenses. So parents typically raise children with the hope that with the lenses they've given them to see the world, that's how they will navigate the world and all of that. And obviously, in our communities, particularly in most black communities, parents have a certain view of success and certain views that they believe that from what they have done. I mean, some have taken to private schools, some have invested so much in their educational life. So they see that investment translate into
success.
A typical normative career. You're a doctor, all the normatives, like, I mean, every parent will thrive to have a child who is an MPCHB, who's a doctor, for instance.
Just so you can tell Makelo,
LLB, accountant, and all of these. Now, if you are going to say, I want to be an artist, we have some form of real lived experience of artists we have seen struggling, right? And we don't understand the generational gaps in between and how things have changed and moved over time. Obviously, if you've taken your child to one of the best schools, you would imagine that they will choose actual science and be in careers where money will translate to a comfortable life. So parents, when you're going to choose non-normative career paths, when you're going to choose a career that leads you to a vocation, like this is what I'm called for. Now, if what you call for is in arts, it's either being an artist, paintings and all of that. Parents never imagined that. Now, but we've got figures in South Africa such as, an example, Laduma, who has built an empire of a brand that is local. It was easy for Laduma to be there as an example because his family had the language for the creativity because it runs in the family. But now, if you're going to say, I'm going to be a fashion designer, when there is no reference of that, how are you going to be successful? If you're going to study drama and theater, how does that translate to bread and butter, right? So parents' views about careers are more aligned with what will look like for you to have security, financial independence.
Hey,
so
get out my house.
Yeah, I think also it's passion versus reasoning type of battle.
For parents, reasoning doesn't really matter. It's what your degree will translate to a job, and that job will provide security. So that you can be off our hands. But at the same time, others, you will be the first graduate to change the narrative. So for those who fall in that spectrum, like some of us, I mean, I became a psychologist, and my mother's worry was, yo, then this thing is 7 years, and it's 7 years, you do your for undergrad, you do your honors, do your masters, and there's no guarantee, right? Because you are amongst the pool. You can imagine Shem from Gwazakela High School, PE, no language that is yin and yang, that's more acceptable. She was more worried. Now, 4 years allows you to work either graduate program that can give you some form of a stipend, then you can boost up a kai. Mine, there was none of that.
Oh, scary.
Right? So I graduated, the understanding was, then what's next? What's next? I'm doing my honors. And fortunately, my program was 4 years. So it was the fourth year was a year that will define my fate. Then, still, after 4 years, still,
nothing.
And
what does that do to you mentally, though?
no, I think as in the journey of becoming a psychologist, you already automatically know this is my journey. If you study MPCHB, you know. If you become or you study to become an accountant, if you study LLB to be an attorney, to be a lawyer, to be an advocate, you already know what you're getting yourself into. But unfortunately, the people around you, they don't understand that the degree is just a tool to navigate your way through. I mean, advocates, they go through a year called pupillage. Pupillage, yeah, that's the correct word. So where there's no, you don't get paid, but you go through a program or that full year that will then earn you the title as an advocate. Now, you can imagine what that looks like, right? But that's just the far end as an example for people who are in the legal space. In psychology, you know you need a master's degree for that. And it's not guaranteed that you will be selected, right? So my career path was not easy. Again, being the first generation to graduate, the hope is next year you get a degree.
Money!
Again, you get that degree, you get that job, whereas there's nothing.
Take us out the hood.
Right? Then I was blessed enough. By the way, I didn't even have the marks to get into psychology. They needed 37 points and I only had 27. How that happened?
How?
10% kind of like the range between 27 and 37 was great. Now, I then said to myself, actually, this could be my calling. And over the years, my experience of existing in a profession like psychology has given me the validation that this is my calling. Then now, the family is going to ask, how is this calling going to bring money?
Yes, because that's the important
It's always
question.
that question.
Now, in relating to her, I mean, she's an artist.
Yeah.
She's a freelancer in the normal, typical world. There is no every month stable salary.
Yes.
You need the gigs.
Yes.
Which are not there.
Which are not there.
Right? And you feel that you're no longer relevant.
Yeah.
There's some sense of social relevance that validates your being in the world. Right? So that's another psychological cost. But ideally, our families would imagine the degree translates to money.
Yes.
But it must be a degree that has some form of, it must be romantic, man. It must be pleasing. It must, But you can't tell us you just graduated a Bachelor of Arts and then win at the end.
Yes. No, because that's what they'll say. You have a degree in public administration, so what? You're going to administer the public? What is this about? But
so the validation, it can be really hard in spaces like that where parents have a certain view. And again, there's this thing, we may talk of it more like it's a common social trend that parents that wanted to be certain things in life and they never became that.
Yeah, they
projected onto the child.
And expect that the child would be that. Now, if your parent had hopes to be a medical doctor and then you choose to be a chef,
go there.
They can't see
Yeah.
how people, as an example, that are there who are good chefs, we've seen doing well, Abolazi Makoti, Chef Zanele, Chef Mang Mang, and all of this. They see it as a far end, but never realize that those things can really help you as an individual to get your way out. But to undo expectations of parents, it's very difficult when they have a certain view that they believe
because
will
parents
be.
need therapy.
They really do.
They need therapy.
They really do. Yeah,
But
I think for Umpume, I don't know if it was a bit different because, I mean, she's choosing this industry of DJing, of artistry, which also, from the mother's perspective, reminds her of the dad, because the dad was a photographer.
Right.
And he's a failed photographer. So now it's a thing of
Now he's
you
a
want to
scanner.
do that thing that your father failed to do. You know, so there's that attachment or memory
In
to
fact,
the whole.
there's trauma there.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
Now, she is determining the fate of the child or deciding what could work for the child on the
Yeah.
basis of her unresolved trauma.
Yes, yeah.
So we need to be mindful of that. Sometimes parents would look for what we term in psychology a corrective emotional experience, right? If I had it very hard, you would hear often patients or parents saying to their kids, I would not like you to live the life I lived.
A lot.
Yeah.
Right? So there could either be compensation or overcompensation or steer your child towards the direction that will make it look like Mpume she's doing the right thing. But the right thing is what lands with trauma in the mother's life. So there, it's very difficult to create emotional safety and to convince the mother that you're not going to be
The
like
same.
your father. And even if I am my father, it's my experience.
It's my life.
It's my life.
Yeah.
Parents typically feel they've got a sense of control because they are parents and they would like you to do what they like.
That's so real.
Yeah.
And I think you've given us a perspective that kind of unlocks compassion for parents and empathy for parents. Because even when you mentioned that they're looking for financial security, a sense of direction in what you're doing, it reminds me of Grace.
Yes.
Because if you look
Sure.
at the
I'm listening.
Yes, if you look at the storyline, Grace's father is low-key a mechanic.
He is,
So he's
yeah.
someone who had the potential to be an engineer, but his generation probably was barred from entering that space. So he's placed all his hopes of his potential on his daughter. And I think that's why he takes it so hard that even goes as far as giving her the silent treatment.
Yes,
But my thing is, there will always be external expectations that exist outside of us and the things that we actually want to do. How do I separate my self-worth from the expectations that are placed from me?
Oh, it's very hard. I mean, some parents would even say, I don't expect you to do anything, right? All you must do is to excel. That's still an expectation.
Yeah.
As much as it may not be a financial transaction, you can call it your typical black tax. But the fact that you still say, do this, and I'm hoping you'll make something out of it.
Yeah.
Right. So parents' expectations are forever suggesting some form of pressure and obligation. So if you are going to need your parents to validate what you do, knowing very well that's not what they believe would work for you, then you're setting up for failure. You can rather sit with the reality that my parents will never ideally understand what I do.
Sure.
But the least I can do is to gradually make them understand
Yeah.
how important this is for me so that I can navigate life in a different way. Yes, you are my father, you may have been a mechanic, and that's been your narrative. But you have given me the tools and worked so hard to give me a voice in the world to choose what works for me.
Yeah.
But there are other people that may not have the emotional capacity of navigating that, and that obviously leads to anxiety.
Yeah.
Because you are worried about your parents expecting something from you and worried that you can't give them what they want. Then there's a cycle of anxiety,
Which is
generalized
exactly
anxiety,
what you went through.
right?
Yeah.
Then there's there's depression. You're often sad, you're often worried because you're looking for this thing that will somewhat feel like would be a mood elevator. But when you get home, you get constantly reminded of how much you're a failure,
Sure. Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I think which goes to show like family dynamics really play a huge role, like, you know, in a lot of things. I think I like with what you said personally as Azande, not like as the character Umpume. I think I went through the same thing, but my journey was a bit different, you know, because I wanted obviously to do this art thing, which was suggested by my mother, by the way, to do art.
You are lucky.
I know,
Blessed.
but my dad didn't get it. You know, so it was a bit difficult for my dad. He was like, okay, so you want to go act on Generations? I was like, no.
Screaming.
It's deeper than that.
Your father.
You know?
I understand very well. I mean, art, what can you do? Right?
No, I mean, I'm also an artist, and it was a similar conversation.
You know, I was like, no, it's deeper than that, you know, and if you could give me a chance to, like, prove it to you, and, you know, so he had a really hard time, like, a difficult time with grasping that, because, like, okay, so you want to go to after is expensive, first of all. Now you want to go to another province, because I'm from KZN, and I was like, no, I want to go to Joburg. So he was like, okay, so there's accommodation, there's what,
and there's Joburg.
You know, there's Joburg on top of that, but, you know, he was just like, okay, it's fine, let's see what you have, you know, so I think as people, we just need to take it upon ourselves, you know, to just make ourselves proud before proving or making other people proud.
And that's what I was going to ask. Is
Yeah.
How do we then define self-worth for ourselves? How do we center ourselves in us approving of us?
Sure. That needs a lot of therapy. Right? That to get to a point of self-worth, it means your emotional intelligence is quite solid, right? I mean, in the world where there are different tools that validate self-worth, and obviously if you struggle with insecurity, for example, Instagram is the worst place to exist in.
Go there.
Because you've got different representations of what look like self-worth, self-esteem, self-acceptance. I mean, if that was the space, we wouldn't need filters, right? We wouldn't need all the work that we do, check for content, check the background, and all of that. But self-worth says, I can post anything.
Just as I am.
Without being concerned about what the other is going to do. For as long as you are expecting a stage and an audience for self-affirmation and self-existence in the world, then you are setting up yourself for failure. Right?
That's a quote right there.
So if you want to experience authentic expression of self-worth, do things that do not need an audience.
Prove it to yourself first.
I don't even need to prove it to myself.
Okay.
I know.
He took it there.
I know.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Whether I can post a picture as an example and only one person comments.
Your mom. Just to make it worse.
You know, I love WhatsApp lately. WhatsApp, it makes you see actually what's going on.
Yeah.
Very few green likes you would get.
True.
But 100 people are viewing your status. Or
I can't see who views my status.
Oh,
right?
do you have great
I have
text?
my great text,
Okay. All right, but for those of us who can see, just for naughty business. Like, oh, I can see here. Who are my real people?
Asante, you're watching
are
my
just
status every
spectators.
But you are not, and that is so true, you know, because sometimes you'll post like I'll post like anything in relation to DiCHiPi, you know, like something that I would be like, oh wow, you know, and I'm just like, you're not saying anything.
Yeah.
Like,
So
what
if
is-
you are going to use such spaces to be validated, I
You're
mean,
gonna have a
sometimes all of these things go as far as childhood. This
They
is why,
always do.
as
Yeah.
psychologists, we love that question. Tell me about your childhood. Even though we may phrase it differently, you know why? Some people never got the thing, hey, walk or do all of. So now, if you look at the psyche of this person, then they develop a personality disorder that we call histrionism. Histrionism is this thing where you should be seen as a star, you should always be Barbie and all of that. For me, like, what really happened to your childhood that you need all of these things that you do for just you to be seen? Obviously, there are people who are just dramatic, who want to be seen, but those certain individuals that always like the red carpet are like, I wonder what you are displaying here. Is it really how you feel? And when we are not there, what's your relationship with yourself? If you're going to need me to say, oh, actually, that dress looks beautiful. So, a lot of what happens in the way we were raised, and in some spaces, I always say to these people, be very careful of seeking for affirmation or love or appreciation from people who have never been celebrated.
Yeah.
True. You know, because sometimes you often find that even if you're doing something good, it takes very few people can walk up and say, oh, wow.
You know what?
You
those
did
people,
that.
Yeah.
They have the language for success and achievement.
Yes.
Now, if you look from our understanding, maybe this is why we've got a lot of witchcraft and umona jealousy. Now, if, for example, I use my example, I mean, I was the first graduate. So I never expected a party at home. There was never an experience of that. The only one that knew the meaning
Of
of
graduating.
what I have put in over the past 4 years,
Sure.
Yeah.
right? The least my mom could do was to attend my graduation. Now, other kids, they
you
went for
relate.
lunch
Oh, no.
and all of that. And then,
Yeah.
like, for me, it was just we went back home and we had tea and scones, right? But I made it upon myself the day I work, I threw a big graduation dinner,
Yeah.
right? And there was a moment of celebration. So sometimes we would hope to be celebrated, but where are the resources to celebrate you? The
Yeah.
least we can say to you, Siyayibona, we may not understand what it means to have a
Yeah.
degree, but we are happy for you.
Yeah.
So also, we can't expect some people to be really happy for us.
Yes.
Chances are, what is ideally a big moment for you? It's like, sure. Then if you're going to expect me to be all crazy about getting a gig or what, about the DiCHiPi, and then like,
And then what?
what's
I
in
think,
for me,
you know,
right?
I think people meet you at the level that they've met themselves.
Beyond that, in
Yeah.
addition to that, I would be able to understand the meaning of that celebration when I have somewhat an experience that is similar, or I know what it means to be celebrated.
Yeah.
So if I have never been celebrated, where do you think I've got the capacity for that?
And I think when you say that we shouldn't look for validation from other people, there needs to be something you do within. I think it can be a very tricky one, especially in the parent-child dynamic, because obviously this is someone that you're looking towards for nurturing, you know? And I think with Grace in particular, especially with that dynamic with her father, when he switches off and gives her the silent treatment, yes, fine, she should be able to affirm herself personally, but that's your father.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially if probably you are a daddy's girl, and then you would need that validation.
Yeah.
But sometimes you need to also question the need for that from that particular person. Does this person even have the capacity to offer that? Maybe Grace's father is just a good father,
Yes.
right, in terms of provision, but has not provided Grace the emotional capacity to exist in the world, right? And that will help Grace navigate the world differently when she understands my father is as good as a provider, but I can access the emotional from my mother. And perhaps in moments of my father giving me silent treatment, I can rather talk to my mom.
Yeah.
Or go to therapy to unpack. How come am I deeply impacted by my father's silence?
Can self-awareness be something that you train yourself to get?
Yeah.
Because that sounds like something that
A lot of
a
it.
self-aware person would do.
I read a lot of it, and I mean, teenagers are not so great with
Yes.
self-awareness and insight. I mean, you always behave in ways that are counterproductive to what you should be doing right, which means your level of insight and awareness is quite low. But when you have really been into life, some breakups here and there, go is real, and then you realize actually, hey, life is hard. You then start developing self-awareness because you've got your own ways of then imagining what would life look like without my parents. And you just start developing your own sense of being in the world. All we strive to do is to just exist in a world that will somewhat accommodate our being and just allow us to be who we need to be. So self-awareness also is greatly harnessed in therapy.
We got everything.
Therapy is a lifestyle.
It is, and I'm thinking of something here, like speaking about the parent-child dynamic, with what you're saying about Grace, that she looks up to her father. So I'm looking at Bume and the relationship that she has with her mom. So the mother is discouraging of all the things that she does. So is it possible to get like a parent that's like envious or jealous of because I mean, if you look at Mpume's mom, she dresses like Mpume, literally.
But she's really old.
And she's really old. So she
and she has a boyfriend.
She has a boyfriend,
that is your boyfriend's age.
So I'm thinking of that.
This is very interesting and wild. So, I mean, on the other side as a traditional healer, I've encountered people who have somewhat been bewitched by their parents.
Hey.
Sure.
So that the parents benefit from the child, right?
Yeah.
Oh. So basically, there's a Zulu word called Zakpuka, or I'm gonna make you work for me. So you realize there's some guys and some ladies, they're forever working for
Mama.
Can't mama fagure some portion that will even. This is an example. This guy has found the love of his life, but because mama
don't kill me,
this young man something that will forever romanticize your relationships or his relationships would forever be sabotaged. Right? Because the mom wants the child to work for her. That's just an example and stuff that I've dealt with. But you can have parental envy because chances are, as much as they would have wanted to be there, but circumstances do not allow. But also the jealousy could come from the fact that, especially when there's nothing in there for them, or you're not giving as much as they expect you to be. But also jealousy could be in a form of, even amongst your siblings, that I wish it could have been this child, not you.
Okay,
All right? And it just translates in that way. So parental jealousy is very possible, especially when there are deep-seated underlying psychological issues. Very few parents would have that without a deeper psychological issue. That could have been something learned from the way they were raised and how they experienced their own parents. And because there's lack of self-awareness and understanding, then they gravitate towards that.
So just to, for any other Mpume out there who's maybe faced with this challenge, what sort of strategies or advice would you give her or him to go about handling such a situation?
Obviously, as a psychologist, therapy.
Believe in your source.
And people have this misunderstanding and misconception around therapy being an expensive exercise, right? So if you want to go for therapy, it doesn't mean you need a private psychologist. what it would mean, you can go to a clinic. We've got government clinics. We've got hospitals, public hospitals that have psychologists on site.
Really?
Yeah.
I had no idea. I'm sorry.
Mostly, you have, for example, Charlotte Matlege, you've got a psychologist there, Tara, Bara, everywhere.
Oh,
Even
wow.
small clinics in our local areas, there are psychologists that are placed there and social workers.
Yes.
So when you think of the word therapy, people think of this massive process. You go for the couch and do all that.
Yes,
that you do.
money.
Tell
So
me about your therapy. Tell me about your childhood. Tell me about, no. You can go for therapy. You can see a counselor to just hold space for you. Therapy, I always say to be the difference between therapy and counseling. Psychotherapy goes too deep. And we uncover, we make sense of these questions about your childhood and all of that. Counseling is more of, this is where you are now. Let's capacitate you with the coping skills and the tools of helping you to navigate. That can be done by a psychologist, that can be done by a social worker, that can be done by a registered counselor, and sometimes even in our churches, pastors and people that we trust as people of faith, traditional leaders can provide counseling. So when we think of the word therapy, I understand why people think the way they think. They associate it with a psychologist. However, counseling, we can think of a social worker, we can think of mfundisi, we can think of mentors who have an understanding about mental health. But it is very difficult sometimes to encourage people to go to these spaces because some people are not even trained for that. So they may not have the tools for that. Secondly, Mpume can find someone that could be a mentor, right? A mentor is someone that you go for counsel and to get some advice when things are not going the way that you imagine them to go. And someone sometimes who is more experienced than you, who is somewhat lived life, and not obviously your peer. Because that can go wrong.
Because we're finding out together for the first
blind
time.
leading the blind, right? And then also make use of self-help books. I mean, some people don't like to read books. I mean, these days we've got Google.
Jiki Journal.
I was about to say.
Even though we need to advise for careful use of these self-help materials that we use, obviously never diagnose yourself using Google.
But cancer.
Or you've got depression and it's just a normal stress, right? They'll give you all the symptoms and you're like tick, 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 tick. Oh my gosh, I'm anxious. Oh my gosh, I'm depressed. So we need to encourage responsible use of self-help books, self-help resources. And sometimes it's just a mere thing of using what is within your reach. I've seen the use of social media working. I've got a lot of colleagues who are doing social media content that is psychological. Beautiful people who talk about anxiety, talk about attachment issues, and tailor it in a way that makes people understand how you can use that in relation to you. So the toolbox of what looks like coping mechanism, there's a lot that you can look at. And obviously, because we live in South Africa, there's not only one way of looking at intervention or what looks like healing. This is where we now come in, the analysts, who may not be even psychologists for that matter, but a traditional healer. Some people, when they have distress or when there is something that we don't understand, we take these people to traditional healers. I mean, obviously, they are very affordable. Leave the ones who are extravagant. But typical traditional healers who are more affordable, they are a resource and a good tool to use for good reasons, not for streetos and the other stuff that people use for black magic. And also pastors. In our churches, always accessible, sometimes not a fee attached to it. So there's not a one-size-fits-all kind of vibe. There's a lot one can utilize. There's journaling. I've seen it's the most topical thing. But it's very difficult to journal when you don't have the language for what you have or what you feel and all of that. So there's a lot of things we can work around as tools of
just
coping.
Just to add on what you also have suggested, there's something called that JiK'iZiNTO has. It's called Big Sis. It's like, I like to call it your digital big sister. So you just go on to, it's like a chat bot. You go into WhatsApp, you just mention whatever issue that you might have, and then it will refer you to like further stages that you can take you to, whether if you can talk to someone and it's free and it's accessible. So I think
I didn't know about that.
Yes.
I definitely have
to get into it.
Yeah, because I've got a lot of people who come to me, and obviously everyone thinks they can drop you a DM.
Yes, very quickly. Can you answer me quickly?
Can you help me? So it's such a resource, cut and paste.
Please go there.
Go there.
And I want to ask you one more question before we go into our quick fire round. And because it's because you keep on hammering on therapy. Is there preparation that I need to do on my end before I go to therapy?
Obviously, therapy comes with stigma, especially in our communities. Chances are when therapy is raised, people are going to think, Grace, all right? Life is the worst thing that could ever be for that person. And that's obviously not true. And unfortunately, we are now realizing mental health is real, right? The depression is real, the anxiety is real. We've seen suicide in our communities. We've seen schizophrenia in our communities. People mistakenly for uloyiwe or there's this, whereas this person has schizophrenia, and schizophrenia comes with hearing voices, seeing things, disorganized behavior. This person is going to be all dirty and be the typical picture that we know of someone who's typically bewitched, but reality is, such realities are in our communities. So I think before we can get to what therapy is and what therapy does, we need to demystify notions and ideas associated with therapy and going for a therapist. You can ask my siblings and other people in my spaces, what is a psychologist? All they think of, something is wrong. Right? And then obviously with the work that they've seen me doing, like, oh, you can do this. No. Therapy is not for only when things are bad. You can go to therapy to enhance your self-awareness. Obviously not for vibes. And I forgot to mention life coaches as well. They also play a huge role in providing some sense of strategic thinking around navigating certain things. So, to your point, therapy, the more we speak about mental health in the way we are speaking right now, we make it more relatable. It will make it easier for young people to consider it as a lifestyle rather than it being this heavy thing that you're going to go and cry and leave the room feeling. And again, people have got this misconception, what's the point of going to therapy? Because what is it going to change? I always say to people, that's the most sacred and professional conversation you can have in your life with someone. That's why you pay for it.
Period. Drop that walla. And I think if anyone wants any further tea, you're gonna need to call Mr. Anele. Book him personally because this is not a free session, my baby. You gotta drop that walla.
We really need to help people understand that therapy is a most beautiful space to hold your vulnerability with someone whom you will never hear a problem discussed with.
Because they're bound by law.
Besides being bound by law, it's a sacred relationship. With your friend, they can decide what to do with that information. But the beautiful thing about therapy, it's sacred, it's a holding space, and you just with someone that knows how to allow you to be human. Whereas with your friend and your parents, there's going to be judgments here and there. For us, even though like
we
listen, we don't judge. Like, okay, we can park it and then quickly move to something else. But obviously, because therapy is a space of vulnerability, we hold it with so much regard in understanding the impact of what it has, even though sometimes therapy can go wrong when you do not choose the person that works with the way you are. So therapy is for everyone, but who you go to matters.
You need to find someone that's suited for you.
Yeah, some would say, I want someone I can be at a spiritual level with. Those are the kind of people that I work with.
Yes.
I want someone with a beautiful energy. I want someone who's a male, who's female. So there's also preferences in therapy. But also one point I need to make, we are different in terms of categories as psychologists. There's educational psychology, there is counseling psychology, there is clinical psychology. Now we've got neuropsychology, we've got forensic psychology and all of that. Now, you need to be able to know which psychologist to go to for this problem.
Okay.
If a problem has to do with learning disorders or struggles with academics, or if you see this child is struggling, don't take that child to a clinical psychologist. Not to say don't, but the best possible person that will be the best fit for what the child needs is an educational psychologist who will do assessments that will be adequate to give us the results we're hoping for.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you're going to deal with severe pathology in the sense that there's major depressive disorder, there's schizophrenia, there's all of these personality disorders that are difficult to understand and treat, clinical psychologist is the best person to be. And then you have counseling psychologists. They can deal with the hectic stuff, but because of certain limitations around our demarcations, there are certain things that they may not be able to do. So who you go to is very important for the kind of help that you need.
Now I'm glad we went to you. So
Yeah.
I'm glad we went to you. We've got a segment in our show that we
Right.
call the hot seat. So
Hectic.
basically, I ask you 3 questions and you can only answer them in 1 sentence.
Hectic.
Nothing more. So you're gonna have
The
to
teacher in me.
pull yourself
All right.
together and try your best. But question number 1: 3 benefits of seeking mental health support.
Emotional safety, a better way of dealing with vulnerability, and good self-awareness.
Yeah, you're doing well so far. Question number 2: how do you deal with being judged?
Ignore and not pay attention to what others think of what you are dealing with, and choosing you.
Hey, you're using conjunctions, ne? and he's dragging the sentence want it to be long. And then last one, your top tips for successfully accessing a service.
Sure. You are happy? Oh, yeah. Happy, satisfied, and able to face the world.
Yeah.
It's
Those are
very-
benefits.
Yeah.
Those are benefits. I'm looking for top tips like arrive early, be respectful to the person who's going to be giving you the service.
Can you give me another one?
You have another one. Do you have another one? I'm shy.
You asked all of them. Okay.
Okay, wait. Now I'm in the hot seat. Now I have to think of thoughts. Okay. Guys,
got it?
I'm cooking. I'm cooking.
Okay.
Spiritual healing or clinical psychology?
Both.
Thank you. That's the answer I was looking for.
I get it.
Those are 2 questions.
No, my mind operates the other way around. There's also some ADHD around.
And you're a clinical psychologist, so that must be a true fact right there.
I don't mind. I tell my patients that you must understand that I've got ADHD, so sometimes you will see my thoughts going this way.
And then coming back.
It's your responsibility to say, Anele, right, this is why.
It's the patient telling the doctor,
No,
we are
it's like,
talking about this.
If you remember, you've paid, right? So when I am moving on the other direction, say, okay, by the way, we're talking about this.
But
This is why I'm adherent to my treatment, right?
because you also need it.
Because I understand my brain works the other way around.
Yeah.
Right. So you accommodate your brain to work with what it can work with, but also it makes it more relatable when you tell your patients that I also have another slightly speech problems with some words, and I tell my patients that sometimes I may not be able to articulate because I have a neuro-related disorder that affects my speech. But I cloud it very nice.
Yeah, you spoken very eloquently. Narabo
So it helps that we also encourage people to be compliant to their treatment in moments when treatment is a prescription. Yeah. It's an issue that a number of people would see a psychologist and then would see a psychiatrist. But then people are like, no, I don't like medication. It has side effects, weight gain, this, that, low libido, you name it. I mean, with antidepressants, not so much of a good presentation there that you may likely get when the side effects are starting. And people would take them, and then because of the impact of the side effects, then they stop.
Yeah.
So I always say to families, yes, I am the one diagnosed with this condition, but let's journey together in helping me manage the condition.
Yeah.
You're not managing the depressed person. You are managing the person who happens to be depressed and needs support. That's another thing with our families. Once you disclose or declare that I am bipolar, I am depressed, you'll
I get depression.
Yes, you'll be reminded.
You can't move, you can't do anything.
Anxiety, like, there she goes with her anxiety, right? So we also need to educate our families about our diagnosis, what it means, and it comes with sometimes treatment, which treatment requires compliance and support.
Yeah. And I think the way that this conversation has kind of gone, you've shed a light into many different areas, and I think that plays a role in that educating of our families, because I think as children we've got better understanding of what our parents go through and the things that are happening in the back of their minds when we're making certain decisions. But I think it also helps us and equips us as people who are going to be the next generation of parents to say, when I'm dealing with this issue, this is probably what's happening, and I might need to go and seek help. So thank you for being a part of the broader conversation and contributing to destigmatizing therapy amongst Black people.
You're so psychologized.
Thank you. And then from you, this is an hour of like just absorbing. I think even your life as a whole, when you speak about ADHD, all these different things, and to see how accomplished you are, it really is a testament to the power of therapy and what it can help a person, even with certain what people would call comorbidities. You can still do it.
And it really is a lifestyle. I think what I appreciate what you keep saying, that therapy is a lifestyle, because like it really just affects everything that we do, just for the last time when I look at Bume and I'm just like, it even like with her relationships, she can't have like a proper relationship, with the guy because of what happened with her dad, So I'm just like, it is a lifestyle. So it's not, we don't need to see it in that negative light. You can see it as in a sense of investing in yourself.
And I hope that you get to invest in yourself, DiCHiPi, because that is how we wrap up today's conversation. Make sure that you check out Big Sis on WhatsApp, because that's how you get plugged into the JiK'iVERSE and you get information on how you can become a stronger, more enhanced version of yourself. Otherwise, we've got 100 million more episodes before this one. There's a lot that we cover, from economic empowerment to mental health empowerment, and I think you would benefit a lot from that. So from us, it is goodbye for now, but for you, it's time to join the JiK'iVERSE.